For nearly a century, a job in McKinsey, BCG, or Bain represented the summit of the business world. This empire began in a time before computers, when the brightest minds went to solve the world's most complex business problems. To land a job there was to secure the ultimate form of career leverage. But these empires are now facing a historical threat. The very 20th century model that created this power is being re-engineered by a 21st century force. These firms, known for their armies of brilliant junior analysts, have quietly begun augmenting their workforce with thousands of AI agents.
About half our firm are non-client facing folks. We're down 25% in that group. With 10% increase in output.
This isn't about efficiency. It's a fundamental rewiring of their DNA. Stay with me and we'll revisit how McKinsey, BCG, and Bain built their dominance. We'll analyze the AI force now reshaping their dominance, and we'll explore what this shift means for everyone aiming for a career in consulting and MBB today. To understand how profound this shift is, you first have to appreciate the old world they built. In the roaring 20s, an age of industrial titans in the US, James McKinsey in 1926 pioneered the idea of management engineering. He was an accounting professor at the University of Chicago. His radical idea was that accounting should not just record the past, it should guide the future. That idea, forward-looking management, was revolutionary at the time. McKinsey's early success in the 1920s positioned the firm to grow alongside the second industrial revolution as corporations expanded in scale and complexity. But McKinsey's methods were not without controversy. During the Great Depression in the 1930s, James McKinsey advised Marshall Field and Company to lay off approximately 1,200 employees as part of a restructuring effort. The decision provoked intense backlash. He reportedly received around 20 death threats. 2 years later, he passed away from pneumonia. That episode left a lasting impression on the firm. McKinsey as a firm came to realization that those who give consequential advice can become targets. From that point forward, the firm chose to remain largely behind the scenes. Clients were not permitted to publicly credit McKinsey for this work. In return, McKinsey would never reveal its client list. That culture of discretion became a defining feature of the firm and remains so even today. McKinsey's reputation and influence expanded rapidly in the decades following World War II, the golden era of American economy. The firm advised several major clients. But in 1963, in the midst of this economic expansion, McKinsey's near-dominant position in consulting faced its first serious challenge when Bruce Henderson founded BCG. Henderson believed the strategy could be analytical and scientific. He introduced simpler frameworks like the Growth Share Matrix and wrote hundreds of essays teaching executives how to think competitively. If McKinsey professionalized management, BCG professionalized corporate strategy. And a decade later, in the turbulent economic climate of 1973, Bill Bain left BCG to form Bain and Company. What had once been a field dominated by a single firm evolved into a three-firm rivalry. But the MBB's dominance has not been smooth. McKinsey has faced public scrutiny over its role during the Enron era and later controversy tied to the opiate crisis in the US and other engagements. While not as headline-heavy as McKinsey's, both Bain and BCG have faced significant public scrutiny as well. These moments remind us these firms are powerful, but not untouchable. Fast forward today, and their scale is staggering. These aren't just firms, they are global institutions that shape governments, advise a large share of Fortune 500 companies. The allure is undeniable. With candidates' acceptance rate rivaling elite universities, a new MBA hire can expect competitive base compensation before bonuses. But the secret to their dominance wasn't just hiring smart people, it was the structure. McKinsey institutionalized a partnership model built on apprenticeship.
For the management at McKinsey & Company, ideas count more than the tenure of the people who have them. Marvin Bauer, who has long fought to build credibility for the consulting profession, says that it's always been imperative to perform superbly at McKinsey if you hope to stay around.
We have a policy in McKinsey that if a person does not succeed in 6 or 7 years and be advanced to a partner, we ask them to leave.
Marvin Bauer, the architect of modern McKinsey. He rebranded McKinsey Consultant. He believed McKinsey Consultant should be discreet like a lawyer, scientific like an engineer, solution-oriented like a doctor, and dedicated like a priest. Internally, he built the firms around values. Consultant works were expected to put the client first and deliver real value. That ethos becomes the foundation of the McKinsey model.
We need to do more than just make money. We need to make an impact on the world. We should be providing leadership, working with governments, the United Nations, the World Health Organization. We need to make a real difference. We need to do more than just get bigger. We're preeminent because we are the best, not because we're the biggest. But in 20 years' time, will we still be regarded as an elite when we employ more top management talent than all of the Fortune 500 combined?
But the McKinsey structure was explicit. At the top were partners, owners of the client relationship. Below them were managers delivering engagements. At a base, large teams of junior analysts doing the analytical groundwork. The system was built on leverage. A partner could build thousands of hours of junior work. It was expensive, it was human intensive, and for nearly a century, it worked. MBB didn't just win on IQ. They engineered the ultimate system for monetizing human intelligence, human networks, to serve powerful organizations at scale.
We've never been more successful than we are today. The reason? We know our strengths and our limits.
Our main problem is managing our expectations. We live with the constant fear that failure is only one study away.
We are insecure overachievers. But fear of failure can be a strength.
But that system depends on one assumption, that intelligence is scarce. What happens when it isn't? Imagine a force that could automate a massive portion of the work done at the base of that pyramid by analysts. That force is generative AI. Artificial intelligence is no longer just a chatbot that answers questions. Most people think of AI as a brilliant generalist, something that can summarize, write, or explain. And it's impressive, but it's still just that, a generalist. In recent presentation, Anthropic described a shift from building agents to building skills.
Skills are organized collections of files that package composable procedural knowledge for agents.
This agent, as many of us have done throughout this year, can be connected to MCP servers. And these are tools and data from the outside world that make the agent more relevant and more effective. And now we can give the same agent a library of hundreds or thousands of skills. A huge part of the value of skills, we think, is going to come from sharing and distribution. We think skills are a big step towards this vision. They provide the procedural knowledge for your agents to do useful things. And as you interact with an agent and give it feedback and more institutional knowledge, it starts to get better, and all of the agents inside your team and your org get better as well. And when someone joins your team and starts using Claude for the first time, it already knows what your team cares about. It knows about your day-to-day, and it knows about how to be most effective for the work that you're doing.
Skills makes the concept of memory more tangible. They don't capture everything. They don't capture every type of information, just procedural knowledge that Claude can use on specific tasks. We have worked with Claude for quite a while. The flexibility of skills matters even more.
Here's the difference. A general AI model is like a genius who knows a little bit about everything, but it doesn't have deep institutional memory. It can reason, but it doesn't retain procedural expertise over time. Skills change that. Instead of creating a different AI for every task, you use one core system supporting by reusable skills, structured packages of procedural knowledge. These skills can pull data, run analysis, write codes, organize files, and execute workflows. And crucially, they persist, they accumulate, they become part of the system. This is not just a smarter chatbot. It's the beginning of software that behaves like a junior worker, but one that doesn't forget and can scale instantly. Now, think about consulting. For decades, firms like McKinsey, BCG, and Bain monetize structured thinking, research, benchmarking, modeling, slide drafting, institutional frameworks. If that procedural layer can be encoded into skills, if expertise can become modular, then a significant portion of junior consulting work becomes automatable. That doesn't eliminate consulting, but it changes where value sits. The scarce asset is no longer raw analysis. It's judgment, context, framing the right problem, leading the room. The breakthrough isn't that AI is smarter. It's that expertise itself can now be turned into infrastructure. And that has deep implications for knowledge work, especially for firms built on scaling human intelligence. This isn't just productivity software. The agent skill is a structural replacement for part of the consulting pyramid. When you automate the core task of junior consultant, the leverage model that generated such immense profit begins to shift. The storm isn't symbolic, it's structural. So now we reach a pivotal question. Will these giants adapt or decline? The case for decline is easy to make. If AI reduces the knowledge gap between consultant and client, why pay millions for armies of analysts? But assuming MBB is standing still would be a mistake. These firms are investing heavily in AI internally. McKinsey publicly launched Lily, its internal proprietary generative AI platform described as an institutional knowledge assistant, and AI capability team called Quantum Blacks. BCG consolidated digital and AI capability under BCGX, which includes thousands of technologies and data scientists globally. Bain established AI-focused internal teams and partnership with major AI providers, positioning AI as central to both internal efficiency and client offerings. Rather than framing these as exact headcounts or precise percentages, the direction is clear. AI is now embedded in how these firms operate. And MBBs are experimenting with outcome-based pricing, proprietary AI-enabled insight, and hybrid technology delivery models. They're not just watching the revolution, they're trying to lead it. So what does it mean for a career in consulting and MBB? The pyramid is shifting, not collapsing, shifting into a diamond, fewer purely execution-focused role. Broader expectation per hire. The role is shifting from super analyst to strategic orchestrator. The premium is shifting from analysis to judgment and hands-on execution together with clients, not just recommendation. AI can generate options, but it cannot sit in a boardroom and navigate political trade-off. It cannot take accountability. It cannot build trust. And in a world flooded with AI-generated analysis, trust becomes even more valuable and rare. The apex is not vanishing, it's moving upward. The conclusion is not that the MBB career is over. It is that it's transforming.
We're simultaneously doing two things at the same time. So we have client-facing folks, which most of you in the audience would know and think about when you think about a McKinsey consultant. We're growing that body at 25% next year. 25%, unprecedented number of new hires because the work is changing. They're not doing the stuff that you talked about. We looked at it, we saved 1.5 million hours in search and synthesis last year. But we're dividending that to solve more complicated problems and do different things. You guys are probably sick of McKinsey charts out there. You know, we have agents that do this. They just gave you 2.5 million of them in the last 6 months. I want to get rid of charts. But the consultants are doing different things. We're adding 25% to that body.
So they're moving up the stack.
They're moving up the stack and doing these more complicated problems. At the same time, though, about half our firm are non-client facing folks. We're down 25% in that group with 10% increase in output. And so simultaneously, and I know this is hard also, particularly for folks to get, we're going to be adding and shrinking simultaneously with the two halves.
And this has never happened in the history of the firm.
Our model has always been synonymous that growth only occurs with total headcount growth.
Yeah.
Now it's actually splitting. We can grow in this part, the client-facing side, and we can shrink in this part and have aggregate growth in total. And that's a new paradigm and a new dynamic.
The firms will likely hire fewer pure junior generalists and place greater emphasis on hybrid talent. People who combine strategic thinking and hands-on execution with real AI fluency. But here's the interesting twist. As the consulting pyramid shifts, the barrier to entry to these firms or candidates doesn't simply rise, it changes. For decades, MBB hiring was heavily filtered through a narrow pipeline. Elite university, predictable career paths, standardized case interviews. In the AI era, that filter may widen.
You framed it as you're a graduate, and how do you get into the workforce, and is it getting tougher? And we did a little bit of work that said, what kind of skills are folks going to need in an AI-infused world? Right, from an employer's point of view, less the startup, but you're more an at-scale enterprise. What can the models not do? And so therefore, what skills will humans play? And the work isn't done, but came back with kind of three key ideas. What can the models not do? Aspire, set the right aspiration. Do you go to low Earth orbit? Do you go to the moon? Do you go to Mars? That's a uniquely human capability. So how do you look for the skills about aspiring and getting others to believe in the aspiration?
So leadership and goal setting.
Human. Judgment. Right? And we've seen a lot around, in this room, evals, but there's no right and wrong in these models. And so how do you set the right parameters, the architecture, based on firm values, based on societal norms, whatever? How do you build the skills to set what the right parameters are? And then finally, true creativity. Right? The models are inference models. The next most likely step, how do you think about orthogonal stuff? And so some of the work we've been doing with large enterprises, if you believe in some of that, it can take you back to challenging some of your assumptions on where you look for talent. It actually means that where you went to school matters a lot less. And so do you start looking for raw intrinsics? Can you widen the base? Can you actually look at, let's take a tech background, not which university you graduated from, but what does your GitHub profile look like? Let's actually get to the content, and could that actually start meaning that a wider set of people can enter the workforce with different pathways?
Because if firms are optimizing for hybrid capability, system thinking, hands-on execution, AI orchestration, real problem solving together with clients, not just recommendation, then talents can come from outside the traditional feeder schools. Even MBB use of AI-assisted recruitment tools could surface candidates who were previously invisible to elite firms. That doesn't mean entry becomes easy. It means the definition of qualified expands. Prestige alone becomes less sufficient. Demonstrated competence becomes more powerful. The human qualities that AI cannot replicate, judgment, clarity, trust building, communication under pressure, become more attractive. In other words, the old barrier was pedigree, the new barrier is capability. And for those who can adapt, the role remains at the pinnacle of business. So the real question is not whether McKinsey, BCG, and Bain will survive the age of AI. History suggests they will adapt. The real question is for your career. Are you building judgment? Are you building creativity? And are you learning how to build trust? And are you learning to orchestrate intelligent systems rather compete with them? If you're a high achiever navigating this shift, I've created a free on-demand masterclass breaking down the frameworks you need to accelerate landing a top-tier business role in a world reshaped by AI. Check out the link in the description below. But in the next video, we narrowed the lens to McKinsey's recruitment machine. Because before the pyramid shift, the gate changes first. Click here to plunge right into it.